There's really nothing worse than when your avoidant partner blindsides you and tells you that they've lost their feelings for you, that the spark is just gone, and they can't even give you an explanation as to why. You press for answers and they just shut down, and there's this cold, stone look in their eyes. They're saying they just lost feelings for you, and they just walk away. It's like you never even mattered. Your heart is crushed and you don't even have any answers. And you're trying to figure out what the heck happened because the relationship felt so good. It felt so real. You had a connection and a chemistry that was out of this world. And suddenly this person is telling you that they don't even have feelings for you and they don't see a future with you. I talk about this a lot because this is probably the most painful thing that you can go through with an avoidant partner, well, now an avoidant ex. You're likely dealing with a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant that leans heavily dismissive. And what's happened is they have had their fears triggered and they have deactivated. They have a very specific set of fears that are based upon consistent childhood emotional neglect that they experienced. Emotions were not safe in their households. Their feelings were rejected. They were not given that love and nurturing. They may have had stable households with food on their plates and clothing on them and a roof over their heads, but they didn't get their emotional needs met. Their emotional needs were squashed. So they learned to suppress their emotions. Whenever something was stressful or difficult, they had to figure out on their own. What they figured out to do is to avoid it, to not deal with it, suppress it, stick their head in the sand like an ostrich. They also personalized that lack of love that they received, growing up to feel defective and unlovable. And this causes them to feel very unsafe with emotional closeness in relationships. They actually associate emotional intimacy with rejection and abandonment. They feel like any tiny disagreement is insurmountable because they fear expressing themselves since they couldn't as a child. And you having any kind of expectations on them is triggering to them as well because they usually had parents or caretakers that were very demanding, but not in a nurturing way. So they grew up to feel like they can never meet expectations. These are all very triggering things. In other words, normal, healthy relationship behaviors trigger this person. The growing closeness of a relationship, the relationship becoming more real, furthering commitment, maybe some disagreements that you had, or needs that you expressed. This person gets triggered, but due to a lack of self-reflection and a lack of self-awareness, because they also avoid looking within themselves, they look for external things to blame these fears and urges to run on. Usually they blame it on you. Somehow you're just too needy or you're just too incompatible. Some sort of vague excuse because they're not looking to confront those core wounds that are causing them to have the urge to run from their relationship. And since they've learned to avoid emotions, they've taken their emotions that they feel for you and they've suppressed them. They've buried them. They've separated and detached themselves from their emotions. This is called deactivation. This is how they've learned to keep themselves safe. So, since they locked away their emotions, it feels to them like they've just fallen out of love, that the spark is gone. They also ride the dopamine high early in a relationship. It's infatuation. Their fears haven't been triggered yet, and that dopamine, which goes off in the brain early in a relationship, is making them feel good. They're not really in touch with their insecurities because they haven't been triggered yet, and that dopamine is masking them. But as the honeymoon phase begins to end, which is usually between 4 to 8 months, the dopamine levels come down because they always do in everybody. But all that's left for the avoidant is their insecurities because they don't really have the ability to oxytocin bond in the way that a healthier person would with a secure attachment style. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. Due to that emotional neglect, they really weren't exposed to oxytocin the way that a more secure, healthier person is. So they aren't really deeply bonding to you the way that you are to them. So when the dopamine levels come down and their insecurities pop up, there isn't that oxytocin there, and they take the remaining feelings that they do have for you and they suppress them and bury them, detach from them, shut down and push you away to feel safe again, to feel regulated, to create emotional distance, which is where they feel safest because they don't risk rejection when you're at a distance, because in their mind, getting too vulnerable equals rejection and abandonment. So it's not actually that you did anything wrong. It's that the relationship was becoming more real. It was becoming too close. Emotional intimacy was building, and that triggered them. So it's no reflection of your worth. It is no reflection of your quality as a partner. It's a reflection of their insecurities, their lack of self-awareness, and their deeply rooted fears of intimacy. They're afraid of getting too close to anybody, and they got too close to you. Because keep in mind, the better you show up for them, the more you're going to trigger them, because the more you're going to trigger that wound that they have where they feel like they are not enough, that you're going to figure out that they're defective. So they push you away. This is why they do have an easier time sticking around for emotionally unavailable partners. Because emotionally unavailable partners don't trigger these wounds because they have an excuse to keep their walls up. Since their partner keeps their walls up, there's no risk of emotional intimacy in that relationship. But you, being the emotionally available partner, you created an environment where closeness naturally built. There was an unspoken pressure for the avoidant to lower their walls for you since you had no walls up for them. So it's not really that you did anything wrong, it's that you did everything right and you were fostering a healthy relationship with normal, healthy relationship behaviors and growing emotional closeness. It's very painful though, because you were completely blindsided, your heart felt like it was ripped out of your chest, and you're not given any answers or closure, and it feels like nothing was ever real to this person. It's not that it wasn't real. They really believe that you were that special person at the time. The problem is, due to their attachment wounds, their insecurities, and their lack of self-awareness, they're just not able to follow through with that. They're not able to follow through with the promises that they made to you about the future. It's unfortunate, but instead of personalizing it, learn to recognize the signs of dismissive avoidant attachment. Learn to recognize the red flags and hold boundaries based on those flags, because you will prevent yourself from getting too tied up with an emotionally unavailable partner, and your boundaries really will protect you from that. But a partner that is emotionally available for you, that can form that deep bond, absolutely can work with your boundaries because they want to show up for you. Don't sell yourself short. This isn't your fault. You're not responsible for their